So Bassem Youssef is a comedian and now seemingly self-appointed spokesperson of the Palestinian people. And quite a fitting one at that, I must say. Here he is talking to Piers Morgan, where he is not only a real Israel hater, but flat out denying the Hamas atrocities of October 7th, really exposing his deep-seated, more than just ignorance, but partiality, bias against Israel, and inability to look at things fairly and objectively. I want to show you what he says and then unpack with you my own analysis of why it is people like Bassem are unable to see clearly what Hamas did. We'll see why that is in a sec, but let's first see his clear denial of reality, effectively modern-day Holocaust denial.
The pictures, you know this picture, right?
Is this burnt-out cars after October 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the picture. All right. And then we should believe that Hamas went in with AK-47 and caused that kind of damage.
Have you seen the footage of them actually going car by car doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, but they didn't. This
is
burned and destroyed.
How do you know how many they did?
Does this look like AK-47 thing?
Looks like a bunch of cars have been set on fire, yeah.
Yeah, set on fire. Okay, this, and then if you, I know...
What's your argument? The Israelis did all that themselves?
This is pictures for something called the Highway of Death from Iraq. Mm-hmm. This is the same thing. This is Apaches. Mm. These are Apaches, right? So this is actually cars.
Right, but have you seen the footage of Hamas going car to car?
Yeah, killing them with machine guns.
And setting fire to the cars?
Yeah, but that is not the
actually, that is exactly how they
do it. That is like a car of an Apache. These are the Apaches.
Well, it's also the look of a car that's been set on fire.
Yeah, but that doesn't cause that kind of incineration.
You're just surmising, you're guessing.
No, I'm not guessing.
Why are you trying to excuse what Hamas did?
One of them is I'm not excusing.
All right.
I'm talking about facts.
Well, these aren't facts. This is just you saying, look at these pictures, look at those, they look quite similar.
At least.
Have you seen many burned out cars in your life?
Hamas were igniting gasoline and using Molotov cocktails to blow up these cars. I mean, we have first witness accounts of this, and it feels almost degrading to even try and respond to what Bassem is saying. But anyway,
at least.
Have you seen many burned out cars in your life? Because I have.
Really, and I have too. In the revolution, I had many. Yeah, but that's.
And they didn't look like that.
But this is Apaches.
Or it's burnt out cars.
So many burnt cars with them.
There were a lot. They went car to car to car.
Yeah,
they were literally stopping cars and killing people and burning them.
Interesting, yes.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you believe it? They wanted us to believe that. They wanted to show the world that.
Well, at least there is a shred of doubt.
It seems, there's not really. What you're trying to do, Bassem, and I understand it, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to put a little protective shield up to what Hamas did. And my response is, I don't know why you would do that, because Hamas didn't want any protective shield to what they were doing. They were gleeful about it. They showed the world in live streaming exactly what they were doing. They were proud of their depravity. You don't need to defend it.
I'm not defending it
or downgrade it, or diminish it, or reduce it.
I'm talking.
Well, let's talk about your claim that you don't think any women were sexually abused.
Yes. Well, the Times of London, which is a right-leaning newspaper, talked about the UN report, and they said Pramila Patten, who confirmed Israeli authorities were unable to provide much of the evidence that political leaders had insisted existed in all the Hamas video footage Patton's team had watched and all the photographs they had seen. There were no depiction of rape. We hired a leading Israeli dark web researcher to look for evidence of those images, including footage deleted from public sources. None could be found. And Patton said the first letter that I received from the government of Israel talked about hundreds of thousands of cases of brutal sexual violence perpetrated against men, women, and children. I have not found anything of that. That is the UN report.
Well, the same UN Special Representative, Pramila Patten, reported in March 24 that there was, quote, clear and convincing information that Israeli hostages in Gaza experienced sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment.
Let's just show, by the way, that this UN report, not that I have much time for the UN, but as you can see, UN report, reasonable grounds to believe conflict-related sexual violence occurred in Israel during 7th October attacks.
There are reasonable grounds to believe such abuse is ongoing. And there was also, her quotes, reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred during the 7th of October attacks in multiple locations across Gaza periphery, including rape and gang rape in at least 3 locations.
But the same commission said has refuted testimonies obtained by journalists and the Israeli police. I'm reading the same report.
It's the same woman.
And I'm reading the same woman.
March 2024. So my point is, you're reading selectively from that report.
And you're reading selectively too?
I'm reading a point which actually crystal clear that there was sexual abuse and violence both on October the 7th and indeed 2 hostages, which may be ongoing.
No, I've read the whole report. And then what you say...
Well, why haven't you read that?
I've read that.
If you read that, you would include that.
But if you read that, you'll include that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing, you see what you're saying here? That
Well, you're just not reading that out.
Piers, the thing is like...
I have great respect for you, Bassem. If you're going to use a woman's quotes to prove your point, you've got to use the rest of the quotes where she actually proves the opposite.
Yeah, but in the same report, they said that all of this was not provided by the Israeli or any forensic evidence that proved that. It's mostly witnesses that was provided
Clear
by
and
the
convincing information. Reasonable grounds to believe.
But there was no... It was written and there's
I've also read people like Christina Lamb, one of the best war correspondents in the world, who writes for the Sunday Times, who has done some stunning journalism with victims of this abuse, female victims of the sexual abuse and rape. I mean, are you saying she's just made that up? Is she lying? She's an award-winning journalist. Why would she?
Well, also Gettleman, Jeffrey Gettleman, who's award-winning journalist of the New York Times, who wrote the Screams Without Voices, Screams Without Words. His article was completely panned by 60 journalists who said that article was a shame.
But are you saying that Christina Lamb just made her reporting up?
I don't know who's Christina Lamb.
You've never heard of her?
No.
Literally one of the top war correspondents in the world, renowned for her utter impartiality.
Yeah, but the thing is...
From a series of reports of women who were raped and abused by Hamas and continue to be so, the hostages. And you don't believe any of it? You think none of it's happened?
No, I don't believe.
You see, I find that disheartening that you wouldn't believe that.
No, I don't believe it. And the thing
it makes me think, Bassem, that, and I listen, I say to you, I have great respect for you, but it makes me think you look at it through such a partisan prism that you can't, even when confronted with obvious
I just confronted
depravity.
You with the same reports.
Well, yeah, but you said...
I showed you had the Hannibal report.
But the point you're trying to make is, well, all these cars were obviously blown up by Israel. Hamas didn't do that to any of them. Hamas didn't rape or abuse any women. And it's all bullshit. Of course they did.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
You know it.
No.
In your heart, you know
I don't think so.
Now we've got to get to the question of why is it that Mr. Youssef is unable to acknowledge what Hamas did? And many people aren't. I mean, look, don't forget what happened on not even October 8th, on October 7th. People went to the streets in capitals across the world with their Palestinian flags, celebrating this great act of resistance. They had to either qualify it and say that it's resistance and it's justifiable, or they had to deny it. Why? It really actually gets to the heart of the whole Israeli-Arab conflict, why he's denying this. Because basically, there's 2 ways of understanding the conflict. The first way, which is what we see people like Bassem and parts of the Arab world and the Western world seem to look at it, which is to think that the Palestinian cause is based on a legitimate grievance provoked by Israel. Israel came in, the narrative is they came in, they kicked out the Arabs, and ever since they've been persecuting them, oppressing them, and therefore the Arabs are just doing what you'd expect them to do, which is to resist, to fight back, and try and get back the land that is theirs. That's his narrative. Narrative number 2, which actually is just the truth, is that the Palestinian cause was never about a legitimate grievance. It is about ideological hatred. It's about an inability to accept the Jewish people as having a state in their ancient homeland. It's about an inability to see the Jewish people as equals in any way, because it threatens the political Islamic view of how history is going to unfold, which is not for the Jewish people to return to their ancient homeland, but for Islam to dominate certainly that region and also the wider world as well. So you've got to understand that the anti-Semitism and this deep-seated hatred has existed for centuries, and it's existed in the Arab world for centuries. And in the decades prior to Israel being founded, the leader of the Palestinians, or as they were known, the Arabs of the region called Palestine, when the British was controlling it, was a man called the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who literally went to the death camps in Nazi Europe to support what they were doing, to learn about what they were doing, and said to Hitler, please, let's collaborate and do the same thing to the Jews of Palestine. This was before there was an Israel. So what legitimate grievance does the Mufti have? No. It's about ideological hatred. Jihadist, deep-seated hatred of the Jewish people. And this narrative that there's a legitimate grievance because Israel came along and just kicked them all out. No, that's not what happened. There were Jews living there and there are Arabs living there in this land. Peacefully. No one was being displaced en masse. You had Arabs that had been living there since the 7th century conquest. But the only sovereign states that had been there had been Jewish ones 2,000 years ago. 2 Jewish sovereign states there, 2 Jewish kingdoms. And the Jews are indigenous to that land and they come from that land. And they return to that land, and they always maintain a presence there, but they return at larger levels in the 19th and 20th century peacefully through legal purchases of land. And Arabs actually start coming more there as well, transferring to that region as well, because Jews are starting to make the land flourish again. So what about all this displacement? Didn't the Jews come along and displace everyone? No, what happened is in 1947, the British said to the UN, we're handing this to you, you decide, you vote on how you'd like to deal with this. And the UN says, right, well, we've got Jews living there and Arabs living there. The Jews have had a sovereign state there 2,000 years ago. They've always maintained a connection there, desired to be there. The Arabs have been there, yes, for many centuries, similar in number. And we understand they might not necessarily want to live under Jewish governance. So we'll split the land into 2. We'll have a Jewish state and an Arab state. There'd never been an Arab state in that land prior. Arab sovereign state. There'd been Arab empires that had controlled it, but not a sovereign state. And the Jews said fine, and the Arabs said no, and they went to war against the Jews. They were trying to displace the Jews. But the reason we don't hear about that is because the Jews won. Israel won. And as a result of their genocidal war, they got displaced. And that's what people like Youssef and others lament about. But it happened because of genocidal hatred, not because of a legitimate grievance, not because Israel came along and kicked everyone out. In fact, a lot of the displacement that occurred, most of it was because the Arabs were told to leave by the armies coming in to try and kill the Jews. They said, leave, get out of our way, then you can come back once we've wiped out all the Jews. But of course, they didn't all come back because Israel won. Sorry, by the way, for winning. Apologies for protecting our people and not being slaughtered for a second time en masse after the Holocaust, just a few years later. By the way, even more Jews were kicked out of Arab countries in 1948 than Arabs were displaced in what was known as the region of Palestine. No one tells you about that, do they? Because Israel resettled them. Whereas the Arab neighbouring countries refused to resettle the Arabs of what was British Mandate of Palestine. So let's get back to Bassem now. Understand that if your narrative is that Israel's the bad guy, it's all legitimate grievance, therefore, you have to say that what the Palestinians and Arabs are doing is resistance. But here's the problem. It gets very difficult to call it resistance when you're burning kids, children, teenagers alive, when you're raping innocent women and even men, by the way, when you're beheading, when you're taking hostage, enslaving, raping, mutilating, cutting off organs. You know, if my grandparents' generation did that to random innocent Germans after they were freed from the camps of Europe, no, the Jewish people would not be turning around and saying, yeah, that's all really super legitimate and that's just part of our resistance. The reason why Bassem has to either justify it, or in this case he's chosen the route of denying it, is because otherwise your whole narrative crumbles. And it points towards the second narrative that's actually the truth, which is that this is based on an ideological hatred of the Jews. Which shouldn't be surprising, because anti-Semitism is the age-old hatred. It's nothing new here. The world has duped us into thinking, or rather the Palestinian leadership have duped the world into thinking that there really is a legitimate grievance here, and that no, it's not. This is not anti-Semitism. This is just the Jews getting a bit too big for their boots. But actually, it turns out they've just brilliantly mutated anti-Semitism into a way that's worked to make the Jews who are the victims seem like they're the evil aggressor. So this is why he has to deny it, because otherwise his whole narrative crumbles. But of course, whether he likes it or not, it is crumbling before his eyes, and Israel is waking up to the fact that for too long they've been indulging in what they thought maybe was just a legitimate grievance. But it turned out that it's actually all the things they lament, the Palestinians, are self-inflicted because of a deep-seated ideological hatred. And resolving that hatred is the only solution towards peace. If you've made it so far in this video, I have a request for you. JTV has been having a really big impact in spreading the truth about Israel and creating positive associations with the Jewish people, Judaism, and Israel. We've really grown a lot, particularly in the last year, and we're having a really significant impact, both for Jews and non-Jews. But I really want to take JTV to the next level so we can start to compete with the other big online media beasts that are often peddling anti-Israel content. And the way we're going to do that is to scale even faster. So I'd love to build a team where we have other presenters doing shows like me, that start doing documentaries, supplementary content, animated content, etc., etc. And to do that, I'd like to build a bit of a team. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one fundraising day, just one, where we try and build up some funding in order to fund such a team. Now, to do that, it's going to obviously require people to get involved. And I'm wondering if you would consider, if you're watching JTV content and appreciate what we do and want to help partner with us in taking this to the next level and spreading the truth farther and wider than ever before, I wonder if you'd consider partnering with us simply by running a mini page on the fundraiser that we do, where you just reach out to your contacts on that day that we choose to fundraise and see if they'll all chip in. If you'd be up for doing that, of which I would be so grateful, then please click on the Google form link in the video description of this video, where you can simply just put in a few contact details. It'll be a very small commitment, as I say, literally just one day that we'll all agree upon as a collective community. But the impact is going to be so big. There's such strength in numbers. If we all pull together and do this, we can take this to the next level. And as I say, all of us can partner together in bringing and spreading the truth to the whole world. So please do consider clicking on that link, filling in the form, and I'll be in touch very soon to talk about the next steps. Small commitment, but a big impact. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.